The first thing Vanessa noticed was the silence. Not the normal kind. Not the peaceful kind couples eventually grow into after 12 years of marriage. This silence felt wrong. Heavy. Like the house itself was holding its breath. "Ethan?" she called casually as she stepped through the front door, dropping her designer handbag onto the marble counter. No answer. Usually he was in the kitchen by now. Coffee in hand. Laptop open. Pretending not to notice her coming home late again. But tonight the kitchen lights were off. The living room was spotless. And the air smelled empty. Vanessa frowned and pulled out her phone. No missed calls. No texts. Strange. She kicked off her heels and walked upstairs, irritation slowly replacing confusion. Ethan? Still nothing. Their bedroom door stood slightly open. Inside, half the closet was empty. At first, her brain refused to process it. Then she saw the hangers. Bare. Perfectly spaced apart like missing teeth. The drawer where he kept his watches sat open and cleared out. His suitcase was gone. The framed wedding photo on his side table had disappeared too. Only hers remained. Vanessa's stomach tightened. No. She rushed into his office. Empty shelves. Gone laptop. No chargers. No files. No trace he had ever existed there. That's when she finally saw the envelope sitting in the center of the desk. White. Plain. Intentional. Her name written across the front in Ethan's precise handwriting. Vanessa stared at it for several seconds before slowly tearing it open. Inside were divorce papers. Signed. Finalized. And beneath them, a single handwritten note. "I know everything. You'll never hear from me again." Her hands started shaking instantly. No, 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 no. She grabbed her phone and dialed Ethan. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Blocked. Her breathing turned uneven now. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. Affairs happened all the time in their world. Flirting. Secret dinners. Hotel rooms hidden behind business trips. Wealthy couples survived worse. But Ethan wasn't yelling. He wasn't begging. He wasn't threatening revenge. That terrified her more than anything. Because silence meant certainty. And Ethan had never been certain about anything before. Vanessa suddenly ran downstairs, panic accelerating her steps. The garage. Maybe he was still here. Maybe this was some dramatic stunt. But when she reached the garage, the second car was gone. Only oil stains remained beneath the empty space. That's when reality finally hit her. He had planned this. Carefully. Patiently. For weeks, maybe months. Every conversation. Every smile. Every quiet dinner they'd shared recently. He already knew. Vanessa stumbled backward against the wall, pulse hammering in her ears. Then another horrifying thought entered her mind. Ethan knew. How much did he know? Her phone buzzed suddenly in her hand. A message from Chloe. "Call me now. Something's happening at the company." Vanessa's blood went cold. Because for the first time that night, she realized the divorce papers might be the least damaging thing Ethan had left behind. 30 minutes later, Vanessa stormed through the glass doors of Blackridge Capital, still wearing yesterday's makeup and a panic she could no longer hide. Employees avoided eye contact immediately. That alone scared her. The lobby felt different. Quiet. Tense. As if everyone already knew something she didn't. She walked faster toward the executive elevators, but her assistant intercepted her halfway there. "Miss Floron? What happened?" Vanessa snapped. The young woman hesitated. "That email?" Vanessa froze. "What email?" The assistant swallowed hard. It went to the entire board. A cold sensation crawled up Vanessa's spine. No. She grabbed the woman's tablet and opened the company inbox. At the top sat a message sent from Ethan's executive account exactly 43 minutes earlier. Subject line: Formal resignation and transfer of evidence. Vanessa's hands trembled as she opened it. Attached were financial records, private messages, travel receipts, photos. Not of her affair. Something worse. Executive fraud. Money laundering through offshore vendors. Signatures. Approvals. Transactions. All linked directly to Daniel Mercer, the married senior partner she'd been sleeping with for nearly a year. And copied on the email: internal compliance, corporate attorneys, federal investigators. Vanessa's knees nearly buckled. No, he wouldn't. But deep down she already knew Ethan would. Because Ethan had built that company's security infrastructure himself. If anyone could destroy careers without saying a word, it was him. Another notification appeared. Then another. News outlets. Financial reporters. Emergency board meeting. Trading suspension rumors. Vanessa looked around the lobby and suddenly understood why everyone was staring. Not with sympathy. With fear. Daniel called her at that exact moment. She answered instantly. "What did you do?" he shouted. "What did I do?" "Ethan sent everything. You said he suspected nothing." "I thought he didn't." "You stupid." The line disconnected. Vanessa stared at the dead screen in horror. For the first time in years she felt completely alone. No Ethan. No Daniel. No control. Only silence. And somehow, that silence was destroying her faster than rage ever could. By midnight, Vanessa's world was collapsing in real time. Every major financial outlet was reporting on Blackridge Capital. Fraud investigation. Emergency board intervention. Possible federal charges. Anonymous insider leaks. The headlines spread faster than she could read them. And Ethan's name was nowhere in any of them. That terrified her most. He hadn't exposed himself. He had erased himself. Vanessa sat alone inside her penthouse office while the city lights blurred behind the windows. Her phone hadn't stopped vibrating for nearly 2 hours. Lawyers, board members, unknown numbers, reporters. She ignored all of them except Daniel. He was calling again, and again, and again. Finally she answered. "What?" she hissed. "You need to fix this." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Fix it? Federal investigators are involved. You said Ethan was weak." "He was." "No," Daniel snapped. "Weak men scream. Weak men beg. Weak men fight for their marriage." The silence on the line stretched. Then he spoke again, quieter this time. "He planned this." Vanessa's throat tightened, because she knew he was right. Every strange moment over the last few months suddenly looked different now. Ethan working later than usual. Ethan becoming calmer. Ethan no longer asking questions. No arguments. No suspicion. No jealousy. Just observation. Like he'd already detached emotionally long before he disappeared physically. Vanessa suddenly remembered one specific night 3 weeks earlier. She had come home at nearly 2 a.m. Daniel's cologne still lingering on her skin. Ethan had been sitting alone on the balcony drinking whiskey. He looked up once as she entered. "That late?" he asked calmly. "Client dinner." Ethan nodded slowly. "Of course." That was it. No accusation. No tension. At the time she'd felt relieved. Now she understood. That wasn't surrender. That was the exact moment he stopped seeing her as his wife. A knock interrupted her thoughts. 3 sharp taps. Vanessa opened the office door to find 2 corporate attorneys standing outside. Neither looked happy. "We need you downstairs," one said. "Now." The boardroom looked like a funeral. 12 executives sat around the massive table in dead silence while legal teams whispered in corners. Daniel stood near the windows, pale and furious. The moment Vanessa entered, several heads turned toward her. Not warmly. Not professionally. Coldly. Like she had become radioactive overnight. Board Chairman Richard Hale adjusted his glasses slowly. "Sit down, Vanessa." She obeyed. Richard slid a folder across the table. "Federal Compliance contacted us directly 20 minutes ago." Vanessa opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were copies of internal transactions. Secret transfers. Offshore accounts. Every page contained signatures. Dates. Authorization trails. Enough evidence to bury multiple executives. Daniel immediately stood. "This is selective evidence," he argued. "Whoever leaked this manipulated the data." Richard's expression darkened. The metadata was verified. Silence. Then another board member spoke quietly. "Ethan documented everything." Vanessa looked up sharply. "What?" The older woman folded her hands. "He spent 8 months building an internal archive." Vanessa felt her stomach drop. 8 months. 8 entire months. Meaning Ethan had discovered the affair long before she ever suspected. Maybe before Daniel even entered the picture. Richard leaned forward. "He also resigned all ownership shares yesterday morning." Vanessa blinked. "What?" "He liquidated everything legally before this became public." That hit harder than anything else. Ethan wasn't reacting emotionally. He had executed an exit strategy. Perfectly. No loose ends. No exposure. No vulnerability. He hadn't left in anger. He had left with precision. Daniel suddenly slammed both palms against the table. "Where is he?" Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. And that silence infected the room instantly. 4 years Ethan Cole had been considered forgettable. Quiet. Polite. The technical genius hidden behind louder executives. The husband nobody feared. Now every person in that room realized the same horrifying truth at once. Quiet men were dangerous when they stopped caring. Vanessa's phone vibrated again beneath the table. Unknown number. She ignored it. The phone vibrated again immediately. Then again. Irritated, she answered. What? For several seconds nobody spoke. Then came Ethan's voice. Calm. Controlled. Emotionless. Check your personal email. Vanessa froze solid. Ethan? The line disconnected. Instantly. She nearly dropped the phone. Her hands shook violently as she opened her inbox. One unread message. No subject line. Sent 12 minutes earlier. Attached was a video file. The timestamp showed footage from inside a luxury hotel suite. Vanessa already knew what it was before pressing play. Her affair with Daniel. Multiple recordings. Different dates. Different rooms. Security camera angles. Audio included. The blood drained from Daniel's face as he realized what she was watching. How bad is it? He whispered. Vanessa couldn't answer. Because at that exact moment she realized something even worse than exposure. Ethan had never intended to save their marriage. He had only stayed long enough to finish building the trap. The boardroom dissolved into chaos within minutes. Daniel was shouting at the legal team. Executives were demanding damage control. Phones rang non-stop across the table like alarms inside a sinking ship. But Vanessa heard almost none of it. Her eyes remained locked on the paused hotel footage glowing from her screen. Ethan had known. Not recently. Not partially. Completely. Every lie. Every meeting. Every stolen weekend disguised as conferences and investor dinners. He had watched everything unfold while sitting across from her at breakfast every morning. And somehow, he never showed it. That was the part destroying her mind. Vanessa slowly stood from her chair. I need air. Nobody stopped her. In fact, several people looked relieved to see her leave. The hallway outside the boardroom felt ice cold. She walked quickly toward the executive restroom, locked herself inside, and gripped the marble sink until her knuckles turned white. Then she looked into the mirror. For the first time in years, she barely recognized herself. Mascara smeared. Hair disheveled. Eyes wide with panic. Not powerful. Not composed. Just afraid. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Vanessa hesitated before answering quietly. Ethan? No, said a woman's voice. Vanessa frowned. Who is this? My name is Claire. Pause. I worked with your husband. Worked. Past tense. Vanessa's chest tightened instantly. What do you want? To warn you. About what? Another silence. Then Claire spoke carefully. You still think this is about revenge? Vanessa said nothing. Claire continued. It's not. Those words sent a chill through her body. What are you talking about? Ethan stopped caring about revenge months ago. Vanessa's breathing slowed. No, this is because of the affair. The affair was just confirmation. Claire's voice remained calm, professional, almost sympathetic. He discovered much bigger problems inside Blackridge while tracing company expenses connected to Daniel Mercer. Vanessa's stomach twisted. Claire continued. At first, he planned to report everything internally. And he realized the corruption went higher than Daniel. Vanessa felt her pulse begin hammering again. How high? Claire hesitated. The board chairman. Richard Hale. Vanessa's blood ran cold. Impossible. Richard practically owned Blackridge. He had political connections, media influence, federal relationships. If Richard was involved, then Ethan hadn't just exposed fraud. He had detonated a war. You're lying, Vanessa whispered weakly. I wish I was. Vanessa slid slowly down against the wall until she was sitting on the restroom floor. None of this made sense anymore. Affairs. Divorce. Corporate fraud. Secret investigations. How long had Ethan been living inside this nightmare while pretending everything was normal? Claire spoke again. You know what scared him most? Vanessa swallowed hard. What? That eventually they'd involve you directly. Vanessa closed her eyes. Because they already had. Daniel used her accounts twice for temporary transaction routing during overseas transfers. At the time he called it procedural balancing. She never asked questions. Now she understood why. Ethan tried to protect you, Claire said quietly. Vanessa opened her eyes instantly. What? He removed your direct authorization access from 3 internal chains 6 weeks ago. Vanessa's mind blanked. He what? You never noticed because he covered it manually. That explained the strange login issues she'd been having recently. The delayed approvals. The temporary account errors. Vanessa suddenly felt sick. Even after discovering the affair. Even after planning to leave. Ethan still tried to shield her. Tears finally filled her eyes. Not because he left. Because she suddenly realized something unbearable. He never stopped loving her. And she had mistaken his silence for weakness. A violent pounding suddenly hit the restroom door. "Vanessa!" someone shouted. She quickly stood and opened it. One of Blackridge's legal advisors looked pale. "You need to come downstairs immediately." "What happened?" The man hesitated. "Federal agents are here." Everything inside her dropped. The lobby looked completely different now. Security personnel stood near the entrances. Employees whispered in terrified clusters. Two men in dark suits were speaking directly with Richard Hale near reception. Daniel was gone. Vanessa immediately noticed that. "Where's Daniel?" Nobody answered. Then she saw it. Through the glass entrance doors. Flashing lights outside the building. Police vehicles. Media vans. Cameras. The story had exploded publicly. Richard suddenly looked directly at her from across the lobby. And for the first time since she'd known him, he looked nervous. That terrified her more than anything else tonight. One federal agent approached calmly. "Vanessa Laurent?" Her throat tightened. "Yes. We need to ask you a few questions regarding financial authorization records connected to Blackridge Capital." Every employee nearby pretended not to listen. But they all were. Vanessa could feel their eyes burning into her. The humiliation hit all at once. Not loud humiliation. Not dramatic humiliation. Worse. Silent humiliation. The kind Ethan specialized in. No screaming. No public breakdown. Just the slow destruction of everything she thought was untouchable. The agent handed her a business card. "You are not under arrest at this time," he said carefully. At this time. Those 3 words echoed violently in her head. Then the lobby television changed suddenly to a breaking news segment. A reporter appeared on screen outside another building downtown. Behind her stood dozens of employees exiting Blackridge's secondary data offices. The headline beneath the broadcast read, "Blackridge whistleblower still missing." Vanessa stopped breathing. Because beside the headline, a picture of Ethan appeared on screen. And for the first time since he vanished, the entire world was finally looking for him too. The moment Ethan's face appeared on the television screen, the lobby fell completely silent. Employees stopped whispering. Lawyers stopped arguing. Even the federal agents turned toward the broadcast. Vanessa stared at the image of her husband frozen beneath the headline. "Blackridge whistleblower still missing." The news anchor spoke rapidly. Sources close to the investigation claim Ethan Cole disappeared less than 12 hours before confidential financial evidence was delivered to multiple federal agencies. Missing. The word disturbed Vanessa deeply. Because Ethan wasn't missing. He left. Deliberately. Carefully. And somehow that made him far more dangerous. The screen shifted to archived footage of Ethan entering Blackridge headquarters months earlier. Quiet expression. Simple gray suit. Coffee in hand. Nobody looking at him twice. Vanessa felt physically sick. How many times had she walked past him in this exact lobby without really seeing him anymore? The anchor continued. Authorities have not confirmed whether Mr. Cole is currently under protective custody or acting independently. Protective custody? Vanessa blinked. What had Ethan uncovered exactly? A hand suddenly grabbed her arm. Richard Hale. His calm executive mask had finally cracked. "You need to come with me," he muttered. Vanessa pulled away slightly. "Why? Now?" Something in his voice terrified her. Richard guided her quickly toward a private conference room near the rear elevators. 2 attorneys followed closely behind before shutting the door. The moment they were alone, Richard's expression hardened completely. "How much did Ethan tell you?" Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. "What? Don't play stupid with me. I don't know what you're talking about." Richard stepped closer. "Your husband spent nearly a year accessing restricted financial archives." Vanessa shook her head. "He handled cybersecurity. He handled far more than that." Richard's tone dropped lower. "There are files missing." A cold sensation spread through her chest. "What files?" But Richard ignored the question. "Where is he?" "I don't know." "Then find him." Vanessa laughed once in shock. "You think he'd answer me now?" Richard didn't respond immediately. That silence alone told her something was very wrong. Then one of the attorneys finally spoke. Mr. Hale believes Ethan copied material unrelated to Blackridge. Vanessa frowned. Unrelated how? The attorney hesitated carefully. Political donations, international accounts, private offshore partnerships. Vanessa looked slowly toward Richard. You said this was internal fraud. Richard's jaw tightened. It was supposed to stay internal. There it was. The truth beneath the truth. Ethan hadn't simply exposed corruption inside one company. He had uncovered an entire network. And now powerful people were panicking. Vanessa suddenly remembered something Ethan once said years ago during a late-night dinner. Most corruption survives because people think nobody is patient enough to map the whole system. At the time she barely listened. Now the memory hit like a knife. Because Ethan was patient. Terrifyingly patient. Richard stepped closer again. If Ethan releases everything, people much bigger than this company get damaged. Vanessa folded her arms tightly. Why are you telling me this? Because he loved you. The words stunned her. Richard continued coldly. You may be the only person he still contacts. Vanessa almost laughed at the absurdity. Ethan wasn't contacting her out of love. He was contacting her to watch her unravel. But deep down, she wasn't fully sure anymore. A sudden commotion erupted outside the conference room. Raised voices. Fast footsteps. Then the door burst open. One of Blackridge's security officers looked panicked. Daniel Mercer is gone. Richard turned instantly. What? He cleared his office 20 minutes ago. Security lost track of his vehicle leaving the underground garage. Vanessa's pulse jumped. Daniel fled. Which meant he knew something too. Richard swore under his breath and stormed toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back toward Vanessa one final time. If Ethan contacts you again? His eyes darkened. You tell me immediately. Then he disappeared. The conference room fell silent. Vanessa stood motionless for several seconds before finally pulling out her phone again. Still blocked. Still nothing from Ethan. But as she stared at the dark screen, another memory surfaced unexpectedly. 3 months earlier. A Sunday morning. Rain against the windows. Ethan sitting beside her on the couch while she answered Daniel's messages in secret. She remembered Ethan looking at her quietly for a long time before asking, Are you happy, Vanessa? At the time the question irritated her. What kind of question is that? A serious one. She barely looked up from her phone. Of course I'm happy. Ethan nodded slowly. Then he smiled. Not sadly. Not angrily. Just knowingly. Now she finally understood why. Because by then he already knew the answer. And maybe he already knew this marriage was over. Vanessa suddenly realized something horrifying. Ethan never confronted her because confrontation wasn't the goal. Freedom was. Everything he did afterward. The evidence. The silence. The disappearance. The divorce papers. It wasn't revenge. It was extraction. Plain. Permanent. Absolute. Her phone buzzed suddenly in her hand. Unknown number. Again. This time her fingers trembled before answering. Ethan? Pause. Then his voice returned. Calm as ever. You should leave the building. Vanessa's heart slammed against her ribs. Where are you? That doesn't matter. What's happening? Another pause. Then. Richard knows federal investigators only received part of the archive. Vanessa froze. Only part? Ethan, what did you find? For the first time since hearing his voice, silence lingered longer than usual. When he finally answered, his tone had changed slightly. Colder. Heads of companies disappear over money every day, Vanessa. A chill ran through her body. What are you talking about? You were never supposed to be involved in this. The line crackled softly. Then Ethan spoke one final sentence. And this time, there was actual emotion in his voice. Fear. They're going to look for me through you. The call disconnected instantly. At that exact moment, the lights inside the conference room went out. Complete darkness. Then came screaming somewhere outside in the hallway. The screaming outside the conference room lasted only a few seconds. Then came darkness. Complete darkness. The entire executive floor had lost power. Vanessa stood frozen beside the table, gripping her phone so tightly her fingers hurt. Emergency lights flickered weakly overhead before dying again. Somewhere down the hallway people were shouting orders. Others sounded terrified. Then came the unmistakable sound of running footsteps. Fast. Aggressive. Not panic. Pursuit. Vanessa's breathing became shallow instantly. Ethan's last words echoed violently inside her head. They're going to look for me through you. A pounding hit the conference room door. 3 hard strikes. Vanessa nearly jumped. Ms. Loran, a voice called from outside. Open the door. Security. At least, it sounded like security. But suddenly she wasn't sure who she could trust anymore. Another bang. Now. Vanessa stepped backward instead. Then her phone vibrated again. A known number. She answered immediately in a whisper. Ethan? Listen carefully, he said calmly. The contrast between his steady voice and the chaos outside made her heart race even faster. There's a service stairwell behind the west elevators. How do you know the power's out? I planned for it. Vanessa shut her eyes briefly. Of course he did. Go down 3 floors, Ethan continued. Parking level C. There's a gray sedan waiting. What is happening? Another violent hit shook the door. Open this door. Ethan ignored the noise. Richard moved sooner than I expected. Vanessa's stomach twisted. You think he caused this? I know he did. Outside, shouting grew louder. Someone yelled for backup. Another voice screamed something about cameras going offline. Vanessa looked toward the conference room windows overlooking downtown. Half the city glittered peacefully outside while her entire life collapsed in darkness. I can't do this, she whispered. Yes, you can. His answer came instantly. Confident. Certain. The same certainty that terrified her from the beginning. Vanessa swallowed hard. Why are you helping me? Silence. For a moment she thought he disconnected. Then Ethan answered quietly. Because despite everything, I still don't want them to destroy you. The words hit harder than any accusation ever could. Tears burned her eyes immediately. Another crash exploded against the door. This time the lock partially cracked. Move, someone shouted outside. Ethan's voice sharpened for the first time. Go. Now. The line disconnected. Vanessa didn't think anymore after that. She ran. The rear exit door led into a narrow emergency corridor lit only by dim red backup lights. Her heels slipped against the concrete as alarms echoed faintly throughout the building. Somewhere above her, people were yelling. Somewhere below, elevators screeched to a stop. Vanessa reached the stairwell and hurried downward, heart pounding so violently it hurt. 3 floors. That's all. But every second felt endless. By the time she reached parking level C, she was breathless and shaking. Rows of luxury vehicles sat in near darkness beneath flickering emergency lights. Then she saw it. Gray sedan. Engine running. Driver's door open. Vanessa approached cautiously. Empty. No driver. Only a phone resting in the passenger seat. Its screen lit up as she got closer. Answer. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Ethan? Get in the car. She looked around immediately. Where are you? Watching. A chill moved through her body. Watching where? From another garage level? Another building? Security cameras? She suddenly realized Ethan could be anywhere, and somehow that made her feel safer than seeing him in person. Vanessa got into the sedan and locked the doors. The moment she did, another vehicle entered the garage at high speed. Black SUV. Then another behind it. Vanessa's blood froze. The SUV stopped hard 20 yards away. 4 men stepped out immediately. Not police. Not federal agents. Dark clothing. Earpieces. Focused movements. Professional. One of them pointed directly toward her car. Drive, Ethan said sharply through the phone. The sedan suddenly accelerated before Vanessa even touched the wheel. She looked down in shock. Self-driving system. Of course. Ethan had programmed the route remotely. The car spun hard around a concrete pillar just as 2 men started running toward them. One of them shouted. Another reached inside his jacket. Vanessa ducked instinctively. The sedan shot toward the parking exit ramp at dangerous speed. What the hell is happening? She screamed. You were right about one thing, Ethan said calmly. What? This was never about the affair. The car burst out into downtown traffic. Behind them, the black SUVs emerged seconds later. Following. Vanessa twisted in her seat. They're behind us. I know. You sound very calm for someone being hunted. Because panic creates mistakes. His voice remained terrifyingly steady. Meanwhile, Vanessa felt seconds away from a breakdown. The sedan cut violently across an intersection, narrowly missing another vehicle. Horns exploded around them. Rain had started falling now, streaking across the windshield beneath city lights. Ethan, her voice cracked. Tell me the truth. A long silence followed. Then, 3 months ago, I found evidence linking Blackridge executives to illegal offshore intelligence contracts. Vanessa stared ahead blankly. What does that mean? It means corporate fraud was only the surface. The SUVs remained close behind them. One car. Then two. They were selling private financial data internationally, Ethan continued. Politicians, CEOs, government officials. Vanessa felt physically ill. That's impossible. I thought so too. The sedan suddenly entered an underground tunnel. Signal lights blurred across the wet pavement. And Richard, she whispered. Another pause. Then Ethan answered with deadly calm. Richard wasn't running the operation. Vanessa's chest tightened. Then who was? For the first time since this nightmare began. Ethan hesitated. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded colder than ever before. Someone powerful enough that people disappear for discovering their name. The call suddenly crackled. Then static. Vanessa pulled the phone away. Ethan? No answer. The signal had died. At the exact same moment, the sedan's navigation screen flashed bright red. Route compromised. And behind her, the black SUVs accelerated. The sedan accelerated hard through the tunnel as warning alarms flashed across the dashboard. Route compromised. Manual override detected. Vanessa stared at the screen in panic. What does that mean? No answer. The phone was dead. Signal lost. Behind her, the black SUVs surged forward aggressively, headlights flooding the rear window like predators closing in. The self-driving system jerked sharply left, narrowly avoiding another car. Tires screamed against wet pavement. Vanessa grabbed the dashboard to steady herself. Ethan. Still nothing. For the first time since this nightmare began, she was completely alone. And suddenly the silence felt different now. Not controlled. Not strategic. Dangerous. The tunnel stretched endlessly ahead while rainwater reflected distorted lights across the concrete walls. Then one of the SUVs rammed the rear bumper. Art. Vanessa screamed as the sedan fishtailed violently. Another impact hit seconds later. These men weren't trying to stop her. They were trying to force the car into a crash. The dashboard flashed again. Remote connection lost. The steering wheel suddenly unlocked beneath her hands. Manual control returned. Oh God. Vanessa hadn't driven manually in years. Not at this speed. Not while being hunted. The sedan swerved dangerously as she grabbed the wheel. Another hit slammed into the back of the car. Metal shrieked. Move! A voice shouted through a loudspeaker behind her. Rain exploded harder against the windshield as the tunnel exit finally appeared ahead. Downtown traffic. Crowded intersections. People everywhere. Vanessa burst out onto the city streets at nearly 80 miles per hour. Horns erupted instantly. Cars scattered aside. The SUVs followed without hesitation. One crossed directly into oncoming traffic just to stay behind her. Professional. Relentless. Vanessa's hands shook violently on the wheel. Think. What would Ethan do? That question entered her mind so naturally it startled her. Because Ethan never panicked. Even now. Even hunted. He stayed calm. Precise. Vanessa looked down at the dead phone beside her. Then something caught her eye. A tiny blinking notification hidden near the bottom of the screen. One unread text. Timestamped 3 minutes earlier. If connection lost, go to Harbor Point Station. Locker 217. Password your anniversary. Vanessa's breathing caught. Harbor Point Station was across the city. Nearly 20 minutes away. If she survived the drive. Another SUV suddenly pulled alongside her left side. One of the men inside looked directly at her. Expressionless. Then he lifted a handgun. Vanessa screamed and swerved instinctively just as the first shot shattered her side mirror. The sound was deafening. Glass exploded across the passenger seat. People on the sidewalk started running. Traffic collapsed into chaos behind her. The SUV driver tried forcing her toward a divider barrier. Vanessa fought the wheel desperately. More gunshots cracked through the rain. One punched through the rear windshield. Another struck the trunk. This wasn't intimidation anymore. They intended to kill her. A memory surfaced suddenly through the panic. Ethan teaching her to drive years ago during a vacation in Italy. She had nearly crashed a rental car along a coastal road while laughing hysterically. Ethan sat beside her calm as ever. Panicking makes the car feel bigger than you, he told her back then. You always sound like a robot. No, he said quietly. I just think better when everyone else stops thinking. At the time she rolled her eyes. Now those words might save her life. Vanessa forced herself to breathe. One inhale. One exhale. Focus. The SUV beside her moved closer again. Too close. Vanessa suddenly slammed the brakes. Art. The maneuver caught the SUV completely off guard. It shot forward past her vehicle, straight into an intersection. A delivery truck plowed directly into its side. The collision exploded violently in sparks and twisted metal. Vanessa stared in shock but kept driving. 2 SUVs left. Sirens echoed somewhere in the distance now. Police finally responding. But that wouldn't matter if these men reached her first. Rain blurred the windshield as she sped toward the harbor district. Her pulse hammered painfully. Then the phone screen lit up suddenly. Incoming call. Ethan. She answered instantly. Where are you? Keep driving. You left me alone. I needed them focused on you. Vanessa froze. What? Silence. Then Ethan spoke carefully. I needed confirmation on who Richard sent. Her anger exploded instantly. You used me as bait? Yes. The honesty stunned her silent. You son of a bitch. I'm sorry. And somehow, he actually sounded sincere. Vanessa gripped the wheel tighter. People are trying to kill me. I know. You know. Vanessa, Ethan interrupted calmly, listen carefully. If those men catch you, they'll ask about the archive. What archive? The files I copied. Another gunshot cracked from behind her. The remaining SUVs were getting closer again. I don't have your files. I know you don't. Then why are they after me? Because they think emotional attachment makes people predictable. Vanessa's chest tightened painfully. And does it? Another silence. Then Ethan answered softly. You were the only unpredictable thing in my life. For one brief second, everything else disappeared. The chase, the betrayal, the fear. All she heard was the truth inside his voice. He had loved her. Completely. Even while planning his disappearance. Even while building the case. Even while watching her betray him. The realization hurt worse than the gunshots. Ethan, she whispered. But his tone sharpened instantly again. Take the next exit. Vanessa obeyed immediately. The harbor district appeared ahead through sheets of rain. Warehouses, shipping yards, empty industrial roads. Harbor Point Station sat near the waterfront like a forgotten relic. Closed for years. Perfect hiding place. Locker 217, Ethan said. Then what? You'll understand. The call crackled violently again. Ethan? They found me sooner than expected. Fear shot through her instantly. What does that mean? Another pause. Then. It means this may be the last time we talk. Vanessa's heart stopped. No. Go inside the station. Now. The line disconnected. This time for good. Behind her, engines roared closer through the storm. And ahead, Harbor Point Station emerged from the darkness. Rain hammered the windshield as Vanessa skidded into the abandoned parking lot outside Harbor Point Station. The old terminal stood dark against the waterfront like a dead monument. Broken windows, rusting signs, floodlights flickering weakly through the storm. Behind her, headlights appeared at the far end of the road. The SUVs were still coming. Vanessa grabbed the phone, shoved open the car door, and sprinted toward the station entrance. Cold rain soaked her instantly. Her heels slipped against cracked pavement as thunder rolled over the harbor. By the time she reached the doors, her lungs were burning. The station was silent inside. Dust coated the old ticket counters. Metal benches sat overturned near shattered vending machines. Somewhere water dripped steadily through the ceiling. Vanessa looked around wildly. Locker 217. Rows of old storage lockers stretched down a dark corridor. She ran. Her pulse thundered in her ears. There. Her shaking hands grabbed the lock keypad. Password, your anniversary. For one horrible second, her mind blanked. Then she typed it in. June 14th. The lock clicked open. Inside sat a black duffel bag. And a single envelope. Vanessa opened it immediately. Her breath caught the moment she recognized Ethan's handwriting. If you're reading this, they reached me before I could finish this myself. No, she whispered. Her hands trembled as she continued reading. I know you probably hate me now. Maybe you should. But I need you to understand something before this ends. Tears blurred her vision instantly. The night I discovered your affair, I was already investigating Blackridge. At first, I thought leaving you would be the hardest part. I was wrong. Vanessa pressed a shaking hand against her mouth. The hardest part was pretending to love you normally after realizing I never stopped. A broken sound escaped her throat. Outside the station, tires screeched loudly. They found her. Ethan's letter continued. Richard Hale answers to people far more dangerous than you ever realized. The archive inside this bag contains everything. Names, accounts, payments, political connections. Enough to destroy all of them. Vanessa looked quickly inside the duffel bag. Hard drives, documents, passports, a second phone. Ethan had prepared for war. I wanted to disappear quietly. I truly did. But once they realized what I found, there was never going to be a peaceful ending. Voices echoed faintly outside now. Men shouting. Getting closer. Vanessa kept reading desperately. You once asked me why I was always so calm. The truth is, I spent most of my life believing emotions were weaknesses people exploited. Then I met you. Tears streamed freely down her face now. Loving you was the only irrational decision I ever made. And somehow it became the most important one. A loud crash echoed through the station entrance. They were inside. Vanessa's breathing turned frantic. But she couldn't stop reading. If you still have a choice when this is over, disappear. Don't trust the police. Don't trust Blackridge. Don't trust anyone connected to Richard. Then came the final lines. The lines that shattered her completely. And Vanessa, despite everything you did, I never left because I stopped loving you. I left because staying beside you was going to get you killed. Footsteps thundered through the station corridor. Close now. Very close. Vanessa folded the letter against her chest as tears and panic collided inside her. For the first time since Ethan vanished, she finally understood him. The silence, the distance, the cold precision. None of it was revenge. It was protection. He carried the burden alone because he believed that was the only way to save her. And she betrayed him anyway. Check the lockers, a man shouted somewhere nearby. Vanessa grabbed the duffel bag instantly. Then the second phone inside it suddenly vibrated. One incoming message. Unknown sender. 3 words. Look behind you. Vanessa turned slowly. A figure stood at the far end of the corridor. Tall. Shadowed by flickering lights and falling rain leaking through the broken ceiling. For one impossible second, her heart stopped. Ethan? The figure stepped forward. Bruised. Exhausted. But alive. Vanessa nearly collapsed from relief. He looked thinner than before. Harder somehow. Like the man she married no longer fully existed. Yet his eyes remained the same. Calm. Watching everything. Ethan glanced once toward the approaching footsteps echoing through the station. Then back at her. You opened the locker, he said quietly. Vanessa stared at him through tears. You're alive. A faint smile touched his face. Barely. The shouting grew louder. The men were seconds away now. Vanessa ran toward him without thinking and slammed into his chest. For a brief moment, Ethan froze in surprise. Then slowly, his arms wrapped around her. Tight. Protective. Like he never wanted to let go again. Vanessa buried her face against him, shaking violently. I'm sorry, she whispered brokenly. I'm so sorry. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Not forgiving. Not condemning. Just tired. Then he gently pulled back and placed something cold into her hand. A car key. There's a boat waiting at Pier 19, he said calmly. Vanessa stared at him in horror. No. You need to leave. I'm not leaving without you. You don't have a choice. More footsteps. Closer. Flashlights swept across the far hallway now. Ethan looked toward the corridor with deadly focus. Then back at Vanessa one final time. You once asked me what silence means. Her chest tightened painfully. Ethan's expression softened slightly. It means the person has already made peace with losing everything. Vanessa grabbed his arm desperately. Don't do this. But Ethan gently removed her hand. Then, for the first time in this entire nightmare, he kissed her. Not passionately. Not desperately. Softly. Like goodbye. Gunshots exploded through the station a second later. Ethan instantly shoved Vanessa behind the lockers as bullets tore through metal walls. Run, he shouted. The last thing Vanessa saw before turning the corner was Ethan stepping directly toward the gunfire alone. Calm, silent, and absolutely fearless.